In order to power a car, it burns gasoline. Gasoline is a fossil fuel. Fuel is burned through a process of combustion, which in the beginning of our school year we learned that it emits carbon dioxide as a byproduct. As we have learned from the carbon cycle, the combustion of fossil fuels will cause carbon dioxide to go towards the atmosphere. And throughout the year, we have learned the greenhouse effect, in which gases in the atmosphere, specifically carbon dioxide, will increase global temperatures. Well, how exactly? Well, the Earth is warmed by the sun, and as we learned in our recent heat units, that sunlight radiates to the Earth and it is partially absorbed by objects which convert the radiated light energy into thermal energy, depending on the albedo, the reflection or absorbance of the light energy conversion, and is partially reflected off by objects back into the atmosphere, eventually exiting the Earth. However, greenhouse gases in the atmosphere can reflect radiation and return it to Earth, further increasing temperatures by trapping this light radiation. This is our problem. And now, in order to solve it, we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. My proposal entails a reduction in the amount of vehicles that convert fossil fuels into greenhouse gases by replacing the millions of cars used privately by 1 to 4 people into trains, buses, or other public transportation methods used mutually by up to 50 times more people. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, each gallon of gasoline used emits 8,887 grams of carbon dioxide. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, in 2025, Americans used about 136 billion gallons of gasoline. That is 121 trillion grams of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere, contributing to the greenhouse effect further and further warming our planet, which in turn contributes to heat inequity. A significant amount of gasoline consumed derives from the transportation sector, as according to the Road Genius statistics and survey displayed slide, there is a total of 238 million current cars currently owned and operated within the United States this year, with 35% of the total being passenger vehicles, 61% of the total being light trucks, and less than 1% of the total being large capacity buses and other transit motor vehicles. On top of that, according to the EPA again, the according to Climate Central, the average temperatures for the contiguous U.S. in 2025 were 2.6 Fahrenheit warmer than the 20th century on average. The 9 warmest years for the U.S. have all occurred since 2012, part of the rapid global warming trend driven by heat-trapping pollution from burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas. Proof that the temperature is rising in correlation with the sharp increase of vehicles in production and commercial use. The more humans operate gas-powered vehicles the more we contribute towards the global warming and the greenhouse effect. As the more cars there are in an area, the more gasoline is converted into carbon dioxide, and the more carbon dioxide there is, the more the planet warms up. A snowball effect. That's where my solution comes in, pivoting the heat inequity problem. See, the typical passenger car only fits 4 to 6 people. However, a large capacity bus can fit up to 50 people. That is 10 times the amount of people a passenger car can. By reducing the amount of cars we use, we can reduce the amount of fossil fuels burnt. And we can cut down 238 million cars by at least 5 times what it is now. We can cut down 121 trillion grams of carbon dioxide by at least 5 times what it is now. According to the EPA again, the largest sources of transportation greenhouse gas emissions in 2022 were light-duty trucks, which include sport utility vehicles, pickup trucks, minivans, medium and heavy-duty trucks, passenger cars, commercial aircrafts, and other aircrafts, pipelines, and ships and boats, and railroad. And 37% of these were contributed to the medium and heavy-duty trucks and cars. 20% of it was due to passenger cars. By replacing small-scale privately owned vehicles, we can reduce emissions significantly, as seen by the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, where they state public U.S. transportation saves 37 million metric tons of carbon dioxide annually, equivalent to the emissions resulting from the electricity generated for the use of 4.9 million households, or every household in Washington, D.C., New York City, Atlanta, Denver, and Los Angeles combined. The more free public transportation we encourage, the less there is of a need for passenger vehicles, light trucks, medium trucks, heavy duty trucks, and therefore less greenhouse gas emissions will be present. And the less greenhouse gas emissions there are the more we work towards solving the heat inequity by allowing radiation to escape the atmosphere, reducing the amount of heat present within the Earth. Of course, in order to implement this change into action, there needs to be a framework, which brings me to my next part of my presentation, the plan. The first step is to take into account the cost. According to the Orange County Transit Authority, California transit agencies reported a total of $897 million of fare revenue and $8.76 billion in operating expenses during fiscal year 2023. Developing a public transit system for public use with encouragement to become a replacement for majority of privately owned vehicles comes with its own major economic feedback, operating on a deficit as a non-profit utility, meaning that the government will have to take time and money out of its day in order to provide the solution. On top of that, there are citizens who are unwilling to give up driving cars. And there's also the already worsening image on public transportation and its affiliation with rampant homeless people, and the varying level of bus driver skills and employment range. The estimated time frame for implementing a system will take about 1.5 decades, as replacing a large part of life will require time in order for people to become comfortable and gradually become comfortable. And this must happen gradually, along with the construction time of planning out routes in each state with bus stops along each road in order to make it conventional. Day by day, we can pass laws to tax private ownership of vehicles, to discourage the private ownership of vehicles and encourage public transportation. And we can also fund tax relief towards public transit users, further encouraging it, until the private ownership of vehicles is majorly relinquished. Along the way, many buses will need to be paid for, manufactured, and shipped out to various locations. Both pre-existing and new bus depots will need to become in service for operations. Total expenses include construction costs, manufacturing costs, maintenance costs, operating costs, which total roughly $10 billion per state. In order to cover these costs, we can implement welfare taxes, taking percentages out of people's pockets in order to save our planet. An arguably controversial decision, but in the end, it is for the best. Of course, there's also the social restraint of day-to-day life being impacted by this change as radical as a shift to the public transportation. However, there are solutions to each problem. For example, sometimes buses don't cover necessary routes. However, the simple solution to this problem is just to add multiple buses in areas to cross over different routes. There is concern over safety in public transportation, such as like homeless people jumping on buses, but because anyone can get on buses. The solution with this would be to implement personal protection units in each bus, arming bus drivers law enforcement grade pepper ball weaponry in order to disarm dangerous individuals. Our last constraint would be culture. There is a large amount of people who prefer traditional vehicles and driving them by themselves in their control. This obstacle is unavoidable due to the freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. However, advertising media to reason and convince this percentage of people, we can ensure that everyone will eventually pitch in towards a cleaner future. Thank you.
Well, your discussion of cost really identified that public transit systems often operate at deficit, but estimated figure of roughly 10 billion per state, I believe it needs more stronger evidence and sourcing. I mean, consider including any sort of like specific examples of transit expansion projects and their actual costs to make your estimate more credible. I think that at least that's what I would do. You could also address potential long-term economic benefits and reduced maintenance costs. That could be a particular thing that you delve into more. You could also talk about lower household transportation expenses and potentially health savings from reduced pollution as well, to make a more balanced cost analysis. I think that's what you need to do.
All right, thank you.
No